Some movies you watch and then you just forget them. But others, you really feel. Christopher Nolan's Interstellar is definitely one of those. It's a film that, for so many people, leaves this deep, lasting emotional mark long after the credits have finished rolling.
So why is that? What is the secret formula that gives this movie such a raw, emotional punch? Well, today we're going to break it down. We're diving right into the core ingredients that make this sci-fi epic hit so close to home for so many of us. And it all starts with a feeling that is, quite literally, bigger than all of us.
Okay, so the very first ingredient in Interstellar's secret sauce is this really complex, kind of overwhelming emotion, awe. It's that feeling you get when you experience something so vast that it just short-circuits your brain for a second. To really get what awe is all about, we have to touch on this old philosophical idea called the sublime. The sublime is that wild feeling you get when you're faced with something so huge, so powerful, so limitless that you can't possibly wrap your head around it. It's the strange mix of feeling totally insignificant, but at the same time, feeling connected to something absolutely enormous.
Psychologists have actually broken this feeling down into two main parts. Awe gets triggered first by what they call perceived vastness. Seeing or thinking about something way, way bigger than you are. And second, by the need for accommodation. That's the mental gymnastics your brain has to do to try and stretch and make sense of this new massive experience.
And Christopher Nolan is an absolute master at manufacturing this feeling. Just think about the tiny little Endurance spacecraft gliding past the enormous rings of Saturn in total silence. Or the pure terror of those waves of the size of mountains. The mind-bending, scientifically accurate look at the black hole Gargantua that creates that conceptual vastness. And all of it gets cranked up to 11 by Hans Zimmer's score, which uses a massive church organ specifically to overwhelm you with sound. It's all designed to make you feel small.
So we've got awe, but that's just part one of the formula. The second key ingredient is how Nolan makes every single emotion feel more intense by using a really simple but incredibly effective technique, contrast.
The best way to explain it is with a super simple analogy. When you jump from a hot tub into a cold pool? That cold water feels way colder because you are just in the heat. The film does the exact same thing with our feelings, yanking us from one extreme to the other, which makes every emotion feel sharper and more powerful. And Interstellar does this beautifully. One moment, we are completely captivated by the wonder of exploring space, that beautiful, shimmering trip through the wormhole. And then the next second, we get slammed with pure horror as the ship shakes violently apart, or we watch a character get swept away by a wave in the blink of an eye. This constant emotional whiplash makes both the wonder and the terror hit so much harder.
The movie does the same thing with its scale too. On the one hand, you have these huge epic stakes, saving the entire human race from extinction. But all of that is grounded in the most intimate, personal story you can imagine, a father's promise to his little girl. The massive stakes make that personal promise feel even more important, and that promise gives us a reason to actually care about the stakes. They make each other stronger.
Now that same cosmic vastness that creates all that awe, well, it has a much, much darker side. And that brings us to our third ingredient, the crushing psychological weight of isolation. It's a pretty simple but chilling truth, right? Being surrounded by millions of miles of lethal, empty space, that takes a serious psychological toll. Because we're social creatures, extreme isolation doesn't just make us feel lonely, it can literally break our minds. We see this play out so clearly in two key characters. For Cooper, his isolation isn't just about the distance, it's about the time he's losing with his kids. This deep longing makes him emotional, even reckless, like when he decides to land on the water planet against all logic. And then you've got Dr. Mann. His years of total solitude drive him completely mad with fear, so much so that he fakes his data and even tries to commit murder just to escape being alone again. Two brilliant specialists, both broken by the void. This quote from Romilly just captures that feeling perfectly. It's the raw, existential dread of knowing you're separated from everything and everyone you know by just a thin metal shell. That's the feeling that really drives the character's desperation. Okay, so this brings us to the fourth and final piece of the puzzle. Most of us see Interstellar as a story about the end of the world. But what if we look at it through the lens of a classic genre? It becomes something else entirely. In its original literary sense, the word apocalypse doesn't actually mean destruction. It means a revelation. So an apocalyptic story isn't really about everything ending. It's about a deep, profound truth being revealed, usually through a really difficult journey that completely changes how we see the world.
As the writer Andrew M. Greeley puts it, this genre is ultimately about hope and reconstruction, not just things falling apart. It's about seeing the end of one era as the necessary start of the next one. And when you think about it like that, suddenly Interstellar just clicks into place.
I mean, look how perfectly the film fits this structure. Cooper's journey through the wormhole, that's a journey to reveal a new truth. The mysterious bulk beings are basically otherworldly mediators, giving them the path forward. We see a very clear vision of the end of humanity's time on Earth, but it's immediately followed by a hopeful glimpse of the next age on Cooper Station and beyond. It's a textbook apocalypse narrative.
All right, so let's put all of these pieces together. Let's finally answer that first question. Why does this movie have such a powerful grip on us? Well, the secret formula is this. First, it uses AWE to make us feel connected to the sublime, to something bigger than ourselves. Second, the power of opposites makes every single emotion, good or bad, feel incredibly sharp and potent. Third, it weaponizes isolation to make this powerful argument for how essential our connections to each other are. And finally, it frames the whole story as an apocalypse of revelation, turning a story about extinction into a profound story of hope. And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The film shows us all the physical limits of our universe, time, space, gravity. But in doing all of that, maybe its ultimate revelation is that our connection to each other is the one and only force that truly has no limits at all. Thanks for watching.